Hello everyone, and thank you for joining our Trend Micro webinar this morning. So I'm joined here by James Walker from Trend Micro, who will be going through the webinar with you.
Okay, thank you very much, Amy. So, good morning everyone, and thank you very much for joining the webinar today. My name is James Walker. I'm one of the solution consultants or technical resources out of the UK for Trend Micro, and the topic today will be discussing, I suppose, some of the challenges and also some of the ways of dealing with those challenges within the modern data center environment, whether that's a data center you own and manage, whether it's a data center in a colo, or whether you're starting to extend your data center into the public cloud and utilizing services from the likes of Amazon or Microsoft, Azure, or even the vCloud Air, that sort of hybrid cloud. So that's what we'll be looking at today. Is, I think there's an acceptance that traditional security doesn't really deal with the challenges that companies face. I thought what I'd do just very quickly for those of you who are not familiar with Trend Mic, just to give a view of who we are and what we do. Our sole focus as an organization is to ensure the world is safe for our customers to exchange digital information, whether that's stopping the bad guys getting to your information or ensuring your users behave in an appropriate way that your data is kept safe. And that it goes for endpoints, for web technology, email technology, all the way out to the data center to secure those virtualized applications sitting on your servers. We're founded in the US, but our headquarters are out of Tokyo, Japan, and traded on the Nikkei. We've got around 5,500 employees. 2014 sales was 6% growth on the 2013 sales stated there. And if you sort of take, we have technology that is available to consumers all the way up to the largest enterprise. And if you can see some examples there. If you take the top 48 global corporations, telecom companies, banks, oil companies, 48 of those will use some sort of Trend Micro technology. So, we've been 26 years in the business. I think we can be considered, sometimes we're considered, or so the perception is we're just an antivirus or anti-malware company. We are a fully fledged security provider across many different capabilities. As I said, today we'll be looking at technology that can help secure the modern data center. And just to give sort of a breadth of coverage, we've got over 500,000 commercial customers globally, covering over 155 million endpoints. So we have a very good global view of what's happening out in the marketplace. So just sort of to set the scene, I think we'll all accept that the traditional enterprise perimeter or boundary has very much been removed. It's estimated by 2016 over 70% of all server workloads will be virtualized. A lot of that using VMware, but Microsoft is certainly starting to increase its presence with its Hyper-V platform. We're also seeing a lot more organizations now utilizing the public cloud with Office 365, moving instances that maybe have data that's less regulated out to Amazon or Microsoft Azure, etc. So the way you need to secure your servers has very much changed. Gone are the days where you can just have a traditional perimeter with your firewall and IPS and everything behind it is protected, because the enterprise just isn't built like that anymore. So what we've certainly see with a lot of our customers is they've tried to take on virtualization, because there's a huge amount of benefits to be taken, but have tried to use their traditional security products within that environment. And as a result, they're not getting the ROI that they expected from their investment. So, while the services are designed to share resources, the security is crippling them. So when scheduled scans kick off, it's knocking them all over. You've got machines that are difficult to secure. You can't automate the security. You've got very quick deployment of new servers, but to actually secure that properly and make sure that it complies to your policy is very much harder. And while you can scale very quickly from a virtualization perspective, moving from sort of physical servers to virtual servers and all the benefits you get, that flexibility and DR, you're not able to really get the full benefits of it because security isn't aware of that it's actually virtualized, and security doesn't follow those virtual machines properly. So, there's a lot of challenges using traditional security, and as Trend Micro, we've recognized we've had to design a brand new portfolio of security technologies to enable security to be optimized and work properly within virtualized and cloud environments. So when we start to look at how do we fix that, fix those issues, it's the need to be able to automate that security. So when you spin up a new virtual machine, that policy is automatically deployed based on the operating system that's running on it, where it's located, what's the applications that's running on it, and having the right policy automatically deployed onto that server without having any IT involvement. Understanding that one of the powers of virtualization is being able to move virtual machines from one physical host to another, and having security technology that has visibility of that is also very important. So, security principles remain the same. You've still got to protect your data, you've still got to comply to regulations, but the way it's done must change. As I say, gone is the traditional perimeter. You've got to now think about, how do I give the same perimeter security to every one of my servers, whether it's a physical server that you haven't been able to virtualize, whether it's a virtualized server, or whether it's a server sitting within a public cloud, which we've mentioned. Now, in order to do that, your security needs to be adaptive. It needs to understand that it's within a virtualized environment. It needs to have the ability to dynamically deploy the right policy and provision that automatically. It needs to have the visibility of the virtualization management platform or the cloud management platform to know when new machines have been spun up or when they've been moved, to make sure the appropriate security is added onto those. And it needs to be workload and application aware, i.e. it needs to know where and when to deploy the policy, and make sure that we're not having scheduled scans happen all at the same time, which can knock out the machines. Ensuring that we have visibility of the operating systems and applications running on those, so we can deploy the correct policy to protect those should new vulnerabilities be found. And we all have the pain of having to try and roll out patches to mission-critical servers. Having the ability to protect those automatically with IPS capabilities is also paramount. But in order to do that, you've got to have visibility of the workload and the applications running on there. And I think we've also got to appreciate that it's not just an anti-malware control you need. You need to look at how do we put the appropriate firewall policy around that virtual machine. Because if you've got a virtual machine sat in Amazon, you've effectively got to extend your traditional perimeter to cover that. So you want anti-malware, compliancy checkbox, but you want to have firewalling controls to lock down that device. You want to have intrusion prevention that is actually aware of what's running on that server and the applications running on there, so it can implement the rules to protect the vulnerabilities that haven't yet been patched. You want integrity monitoring, so part of a PCI requirement is to have visibility of any changes that happen to a server. If that server is out somewhere else, you still need to have visibility of that. So having integrated integrity monitoring, file integrity monitoring is very important. We are all overrun with syslog, so being able to extract the right logs that really need to be paid attention to, having the ability to do log inspection within these environments is also very important. And then going beyond that, even adding data encryption. So if you've got virtual machines in a public cloud, you might want to be able to encrypt the data element of that to ensure that it's if the data is replicated to other parts of the world, or when you move from that provider to another, that data, doesn't matter where it is, it can't be accessed by anyone unauthorized, and you can look after the key servers yourself. But also finally being able to scan those applications if you've got web servers hosted in public environments where you don't have local scanning service, it's being able to scan those remotely using a service. So it goes far beyond just purely an anti-malware requirement. I think the other really important thing to note is it's the requirement for you to get the best value out of virtualization and cloud technology. You need to have the flexibility to move to different providers. And there are a lot of different providers out there. So on the virtualization space, VMware, Hyper-V, Citrix, Zen Server. Then you've got sort of Amazon using OpenStack and KVM, etc. But also the hardware providers providing those virtualization solutions, the actual hardware behind it, making sure that that's going to work properly. But when we start to talk, especially around the cloud providers and the likes of VMware, etc., having the ability to integrate directly into the management interface. So if I spin up a service in Amazon, for example, I know that that's been spun up because the management interface for my security has seen that machine being spun up, and as a result a policy is deployed that's based on what the organization needs. And that goes with Microsoft Azure, that might be with vCloud Air where you're using the hybrid service and you're vMotioning servers from your local vSphere estate to the vCloud Air. Again, you want to have security that can follow that and automate within that environment. And as I say, traditional security will not work in this environment. It will be, and if you try to make it work, not only will it damage the performance that you're expecting, but it will make it incredibly complex. So having something that's fully automated, which can also have multiple security controls, is very, very important. And I think this really helps to visualize what I was talking about earlier around that traditional perimeter disappearing. So in your old environment, you would have had your server with your various security controls on. You'd have an operating system, and you'd have had some storage and applications on there. And then you'd have had your network security, or your traditional perimeter, with your firewall, IDS, IPS, web reputation, or web proxy that protects all of those servers sitting behind it. When you move your instances to the cloud, you don't have the luxury of having that local network security. You need to have a wrapper that can do all the network security and the security software controls all from a single solution. And that's where Trend Micro has created the deep security product, which we'll talk about in more detail today. But it's understanding that you lose all of this when you move. There's a lot of benefits from going to the cloud and from virtualizing, but you've got to take into account that there's security needs to be done in a different way. So when we start to look at automating security, this needs to be done by either integrating, as I say, directly into vCenter or vCloud Director or Active Directory, and then if you're moving to the cloud, Amazon, Azure, vCloud Air, all of those need to be, we need to have visibility of that management infrastructure in order to automate. And that's one of the most important things. In order to automate security, you need to have that visibility. Not a batch-based visibility, but a real-time, always-on visibility. So when anything is added, so maybe you've got auto-scaling on web servers, having that security automatically be provisioned to the web server with the right rules as more web servers are spun up, that is very, very important. And that's what Trend Micro can provide with deep security. So when we start to look at deep security as a whole, I mean, deep security works with all providers. I would say with VMware we have the tightest integration. So with all the vSphere versions, so even all the latest 5, 5.1, 5.5, and even vSphere 6 and NSX we have integration into. vCenter and vCenter operations, we also can support the Horizon desktop and have integration into that vCloud Air. So when you start to look at all of the capabilities we have within the VMware environment, it means you can have a seamless security approach to your virtualized environment. And this gives you just another view of all of the integrations. So deep security at the center can do all of your security, so your traditional server estate on vSphere, whether you're using the hybrid cloud or moving instances permanently to vCloud, whether it's vCenter operations, or if you're starting to look at moving to NSX, we now integrate directly into NSX as catalog items. So you can provision the security for your NSX environment, as well as where you may be looking at VDI within the Horizon suite. We can also help protect those VDI environments. Again, that automated security, removing the need to have software on the actual virtualized servers themselves, greatly reduces the impact on the performance of those. So that's something we'll sort of cover in a little while. So let's look at deep security as an architecture. So obviously there's going to be a lot of talk around VMware, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't work on other environments, but there are some quite nice differentiators running within a VMware environment. So deep security consists of the deep security manager, and it can have it's got two deployment methods. You've got a standard agent, so an agent would be deployed into, say, an Amazon instance or a Hyper-V instance, and that one agent can give you anti-malware, web reputation, intrusion prevention, firewalling, the integrity monitoring, and the log inspection. But that will require a single agent per deployment. Obviously, being one agent, it greatly reduces the impact on that single machine. But I think the real value comes for those of you who are using VMware. We can deploy one virtual appliance per ESX host. So this removes the need to have any software on the actual virtual machines themselves. So that significantly improves the density that you can have on the server. So for a typical server environment, you could get up to a 30% increase in density. For VDI, that can even go for 60, even 80% increase in density because of the commonality of the build, because of the fact that we only have to use one set of memory and CPU for the virtual appliance, and not for every single virtual machine within that on that hypervisor. The other advantage is the fact that this is always up to date. Obviously, with an agent, once it's deployed, it has to pull down its signatures and pattern files. Because the virtual appliance is always on that host, any new virtual machines that are spun up or those that are being suspended are automatically protected by the policy and the up-to-date patterns and rules on that virtual appliance. So the virtual appliance helps, one, with the automation of security, but also reduces the impact on the performance of that hardware that you've acquired to run your virtual estate, and so you can get a better return on investment from that purchase. And also, notes up here, we're talking about vCenter. There's also Active Directory integration, but because we have a one-to-one link to vCenter, we get visibility of anything that changes in there and adjust the security appropriately, because we have event-based policy which will push out new policy based on created, okay, or even vMotioned. So that is, that's a very important piece to take into account, is the reduced management overhead, that optimization of the management around the security of your virtualized environment. Just a brief case study here from MicroStrategy. They had a problem. They had over 2,000 virtual servers, and they were finding, the fact that they couldn't automate their security very, very difficult. It was causing major productivity issues with them, and they had limiting controls in place. So they moved to deep security, and it made a huge difference to their productivity impacts because of the automation of security. And one of the key ones was the virtual patching. So when we talk about the intrusion prevention, because we have visibility of the OS that's sitting on the server and of the application sitting on the server and the patch levels are at, we will deploy only the IPS rules that are required to protect that virtual machine from the vulnerabilities that haven't yet been patched. So there's a lot of benefits from that virtual patching, and we'll touch on that in a little bit, a little while longer. So in terms of how it works, we've talked about the fact that we can either integrate with vSphere and vCenter, but also vCloud Director. but also for non-VMware environments, we can link into LDAP or Active Directory to get visibility, and again, automatically provision security based on that as well. This just gives you a view here. So obviously, this would be your typical vCenter organization structure, and you can see this is a direct copy of what you see within the Deep Security Manager, and you can start to see, what the machine is, what's the operating system, and what the protection is. So this machine has just been spun up, and the event-based task is automatically applying the right security policy. So that could be anti-malware, could be IPS, etc. But all of that is automated as part of that process. As I mentioned also, we now integrate with VMware's NSX, so a software-defined networking solution. So now this becomes a catalog item within the pull-down menu. So you can see here, Trend Micro Deep Security Anti-Malware IPS, that is part of the NSX catalog. So when you're building new assets, you can have them as part of that deployment. So I wanted to just spend a few moments on the virtual patching. Obviously, IPS, intrusion prevention, is not a new technology, but I think to understand the value of this within a virtualized or cloud context is very important, especially on the server side. So when we take a typical vulnerability, it's discovered, it's announced. It's probably been used by certain organizations or groups to get access to organizations in the past, but once it's in the public, there is a time while the vendor builds the patch and then distributes that to the customers using their technology. Then as a customer, you need to test this, especially within your server estate, because you're not going to want to just push a patch out, especially on mission critical servers. And then you're either going to have to renegotiate with the business if it's a critical patch, a new maintenance window to be able to reboot servers to deploy that patch, or wait for that patch window, that normal maintenance window. Now, during that period, all of your systems are at risk, and also if you've got to think about doing this as an emergency patch, you have to pay people overtime, you might have to reduce the productivity of business while certain applications are taken down during non-maintenance windows. Again, that's got a cost to it. So the way virtual patching works is it actually takes an IPS rule and protects that vulnerability from exploit immediately once it's pushed out, without having to deploy any software onto that server itself. So you reduce the potential risk of downtime by pushing out an untested patch, which might corrupt the application, and it gives you the proper time to test it and to roll out your patches during your normal maintenance windows. So it's not a replacement for patching, but it's certainly a solution that can complement it and reduce that opportunity for risk. Now, one thing I will also add that's very important, while I say it's not a replacement for patching, it is when your operating system is no longer supported by your vendor. So let's take Microsoft with XP. So that is no longer supported. We will continue to support XP vulnerabilities and push out IPS rules until the end of 2017. Probably the biggest headache for you at the moment is converting all your 2003 server estate, and some of those you won't be able to because you'll have applications that were built for them. That is end of support in July. We have said we will continue to support Server 2003 environments until the end of 2020. So that's anti-malware, signatures, and virtual patching rules for any vulnerabilities that are found to help protect those servers that will no longer be patched by Microsoft, or to remove the need for you to go and spend huge amounts of money to get extended support from Microsoft. We can do that for you using the virtual patching. So it's very good in the day-to-day, but also helps with legacy operating systems that are no longer supported. Okay, so that greatly reduces the risk to the organization. And we cover about 300 different applications and operating systems, so all your Windows, Linux, some AIX, some Unix, and most of the applications that would sit within that server environment. So it's got a very broad coverage. And generally, as a rule, we would take about 4 to 6 hours to roll out a new rule. So once something has been announced, we will have a rule out to protect that within 4 to 6 hours, and you can run a manual scan across your estate to push out that that rule to all of your servers or endpoints, depending on where you've got it deployed. But we do have an SLA for Microsoft within 48 hours, but I say as a rule, sort of 2 to 6 hours is generally where that rule is rolled out. So when we start to visualize what we're talking about in terms of reducing the load on, as I said, VMware environment, in the past you would have had security deployed on each virtual server, and obviously that would use up space within your storage associated with that VMDK file or the storage of that virtual machine. By using the virtual appliance and bringing that single instance onto that ESX, you're reducing the network usage, you're increasing the scan speed, you're reducing the CPU and memory usage, reducing the IOPS and the storage that's associated with that. So when you think about how much money you're spending on your infrastructure to enable you to have the right performance, you want to make sure you don't damage it by putting security in place. So this is it's a very compelling reason to move to this type of compliance. And we're not talking just about anti-malware, we're talking about all of the security controls that I talked about. And also from 5.1 of VMware's vSphere, we also now take advantage of the scan cache. So once we scan one machine, any similarities on further machines are whitelisted. So by the time we've gone through scanning all of the machines, the speed from the first machine to the last machine is greatly reduced. So it can take up to 20 times faster for full scans, 5 times faster for real-time scans, and things like VDI login, where users are going to complain if they've got poor performance. It can improve the login time of VDI sessions by up to at least 2 times. But also, it's not just that from the previous slide; it's the fact that you also get the improvement in the amount of virtual machines, virtual servers or VDI sessions you can run off that physical hardware. Okay, so when we start to look at beyond just anti-malware, where you've got PCI requirements, you're going to need things like integrity monitoring. You're going to need application scanning. Those are all part of the capabilities of this solution as well. So we can help deal with those compliance and regulatory requirements. Another example here of NTT, they wanted to protect 30,000 VDI users and 300 servers. They had big problems with performance on their VDI environment. They reduced the workload on their storage by 70% by moving to deep security to protect their VDI sessions, and it greatly reduced the management complexity that they had running that environment, because it was all automated and they had multiple controls for their environment. We've got thousands and thousands of customers using this globally, so I'd be happy if you wanted to speak to someone within your industry to understand what benefits it brought them. I'm happy to organise that for you if that's something you want to do as well. So just to summarize, Trend Micro can deliver that new approach and optimize your security. It's adaptive, it's context aware, it's aware of the software and the platform, it's fully automated because it's integrated into the management infrastructure of both the virtualized environment but also the cloud-based environment. So it gives you, not only optimizes your investment, but also gives you that flexibility to protect physical machines, physical servers, virtualized machines, but also those machines in the public cloud as well. So and as I said, it's not just anti-malware, it's that IPS with the virtual patching, it's the firewall, integrity monitoring, the log inspection, and then beyond that also, if you wish to, being able to protect that data associated with that virtual machine where that exists. So very, very comprehensive platform. And just to give you some, I suppose, visibility of where we sit within the server security market share, so this was based on IDC's market share figures. Trend Micro hold the #1 position in terms of security software for the server market. So we're obviously doing something right, and I truly believe that there is no one else in this industry that can do server security in the way we can, especially when you consider that as organizations you are not all virtualized or all in the cloud or all using traditional, so you are in some stage of migration, and potentially you will always have some local servers, but you want to take advantage of the cloud, and having that integrated approach is very important. So that brings me to the end of my session. I'd like to thank you very much. I think now we'll move over to any questions that have appeared in the chat window. So if you haven't already and you want to ask any questions, yeah, if you just put them in the questions panel on the GoToMeeting panel, we can answer those. Okay, so there's no questions so far, so hopefully I've done a good job and you understand exactly what I was talking about. But we'll give it another 30 seconds. So if you do have any questions that you don't want to ask over the chat window, feel free to reach out to your Bytes account manager, and they will be able to either answer them directly or pass them across to ourselves to help you answer. But I think yeah, I don't think there's any questions coming up. So from myself, James Walker at Trend Micro, a big thank you very much for your time today. I'll just hand back to Amy to close off the call.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, James. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today on the webinar. So as mentioned previously, if you could please fill out the feedback form at the end, if you would like any more information or a call back from one of our account managers, that would be great. So thanks for joining, and thanks again, James, for presenting the webinar today.